so that it's not just the preacher telling you what to think, but there's room for, say, I didn't quite get that, or I'm not, I have a hard time understanding this, I have a hard time believing this. So there's actually room for response, questions, wrestling with the text and with the ideas, so that it's not simply seen as top down. Preaching, of course, is proclamation, and we are stating this is what God's word says, but you also allow for wrestling with questions. In preaching, acknowledge verbally, say, look, the complexity and the difficulties of objections to the faith. So you're going to say, again, one of those things, those topics that's difficult for millennials to come to grips with is the idea of Christ is the only way to heaven. If you're preaching on that, you've got to acknowledge that. You can't just gloss this over. You can't just ignore the fact, hey, Jesus is the only way to heaven, and you've got to believe that. Or no, you've got to say, no, listen, this is really difficult to believe. And there are some of us in this room that are going to have a hard time grasping this, and that's okay, because you've got to embrace and acknowledge that, and I think that's so important. Affirm the importance of asking tough questions, right? Don't just say, if you question this, there's something wrong. You've got to believe more. No, affirm that it's important to question these things. It's important to ask difficult questions of the text. More broadly speaking, not just preaching, but more broadly in terms of ministry strategy for a church, create space for cultivating friendships. It's important, I think, because the gospel flourishes and takes root in community, it's important that you're intentional about creating community, a space for for the millennial generation. It doesn't do to just, have just worship time, but there has to be something that's going to be relatable and enjoyable. I mean, it might be, dessert night at a local restaurant, it's group outings, but also Bible study groups and places where, 3 or 4 or 5 people can come together and study the scriptures together. A couple ones, one that's maybe not hugely important, but I think it has its place, but embrace and affirm the place of visual arts. That's something that millennials are particularly appreciative often of art, painting and music, and the church is sometimes seen as anti-arts, and I think it can be a good thing to rethink how the church sees the place of arts. Provide and promote opportunities for service ministries in the local church and the local community. Because millennials see the injustices and the problems of culture and society, because these matter to them, it's important that the church find a way to present those opportunities in a way that's going, of course, to be gospel-centered, right, grounded in the gospel. Finally, and this is a little bit more general, preach sermons that are intellectually stimulating as well as personal in tone, right? I've already said that the purpose of preaching, at least to millennials, can't be just to tell them what to think. You've got to engage their minds, help them think through the issues, but it's got to be also personal in tone. If they perceive a sort of a person who thinks they're above their audience, there's just no connection, and they're not going to hear what you have to say. So that's the end. Those are hopefully some challenges, hopefully some ways for you to think about how to engage your ministry context with millennial people, but also here as leaders at Sunny Slope Church, you can think about this, and we talk about it more completely together. But I want to encourage you to value this group, this segment of your church population. It's a wonderful age group. They have a lot to offer. They take many things seriously about their faith. They're looking for, I think they're hungry for the gospel. They're hungry for the gospel. What a beautiful thing, what a beautiful opportunity for the church to minister and to feed that hunger.